Joined now by James Hunnamston-Pope, who's a housing expert, to talk about big announcements expecting today before Parliament goes into recess for the summer about housing. Good morning to you, James.
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, Angela Rayner is, of course, not just Deputy Prime Minister, she's also Housing Secretary. I think they dropped the whole levelling up nonsense. I mean, not that levelling up's a nonsense, but the job titles are nonsense. And basically, they're going to be announcing their big house building plan. It's the same number of houses as the Tories had promised, which was 300,000 a year over a 5-year Parliament, but actually was never actually achieved by the Tories. But it also involves building on some parts of the green belt. And also, I'm fascinated by this requirement that buildings no longer have to be beautiful. We've had a lot of buildings put up near me over recent years. Not one of them has been beautiful. I was not aware that this was a legal requirement.
No, I mean, it's a strange one because I look at most new builds and don't think they look particularly beautiful.
They're bloody horrible, most of them. I think that's the main objection most people have.
Yeah, they're all cookie cutter, aren't they? They all look exactly the same no matter where you go. And I think that's the problem. But the biggest news of this is that they are, Angela Rayner is going to impose targets on local authorities again, and they are planning on hitting that 1.5 million homes over the course of their tenure. Yeah. I struggle to see how they're going to do it.
Well, yes. I mean, something I put to a Labour MP was on the show yesterday in terms of the number of people available to do the work, the cost of the materials, getting the planning through. I mean, Labour managing around, Tories managing around 200,000 at the start, but but it's not enough, and we know even 300,000 a year isn't enough to deal with the huge population increase we've seen, and with no signs of it completely disappearing. Let's talk about this issue over. Targets and basically requirement, quotas effectively for local areas. You are going to have to build this many homes, and the NIMBYs, frankly, are just going to get two fingers because, you're stopping us building these houses. Now, this is something the Tories tried to bring in, and then they realised it came up against a lot of Tory voters and Tory MPs of the Shires going, you're annoying all of my voters, and then they backed down on it. Do you think Labour are going to stick by this?
Well, I think that very interestingly, in quite a few things that I've read, there's a few lines after the reinstating of these housing targets that also says that local governments and local authorities can give reasons why they don't believe they should hit those targets that are being imposed on them. So there's already a loophole for local authorities to go, these are reasons why we don't believe.
We absolutely think there should be more homes, just not here. But isn't that the argument every NIMBY gives? And that's why we end up with not in my backyard, but that famous banana, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. Because actually everyone can argue. What amazes me, I live in a conservation area, very lovely street. You try and change your window, you're not allowed to put double glazing in, any change whatsoever. You replace a mosaic tile, it's got to be to the exact measurements. They are absolutely pernickety in my local Labour council. But the end of the street built an absolute, I think King Charles would call it a carbuncle, a monstrosity. The brickwork's the wrong colour, the windows are different, a modern, horrible, ugly thing. No, they're allowed to do it, that's fine. Isn't that what most people object to? It's not just more housing, it's always so darned ugly.
Well, I think it is. And I think the other part that people object to is that time and time again, new homes are just tagged onto current towns and the infrastructure's not there. The doctor surgeries, the schools, the shops, it doesn't exist. Roadways are absolute chaos around new developments for years. So I can understand why people go, I can understand why we need new homes, but I really don't want them anywhere near us because it's going to be hell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anyone who's had building work in my street, genuinely, there's somebody who has building work pretty much, 12 months of the year. And we've lived there 18 years, I would say every single year. But, but people need homes. So what about this building on the grey belt? And can you describe to us what the grey belt is? Because we always have people going, it's absolutely outrageous, you can't build on the green belt. But most people have a completely false idea of what the green belt actually is. So can you explain both of those concepts?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think of Greenbelt, you think of luscious rolling fields and green land, and that just isn't the case. There are, believe it or not, pieces of wasteland, car parks that are currently classified as Greenbelt land. So essentially what they are proposing is that there's going to be a reclassification of those pieces of land, and they will then be called Greybelt. So actually, if the right architecture is put there, they could look very nice, but It's not your green fields that are being paved over.
No, and it's ugly wasteland anyway. And
Exactly.
the idea of it originally, well, the Greenbelt, wasn't that it's all beautiful lit fields that need to be protected. It was to stop basically the sprawl of big cities, and basically they'd all kind of merge into one, and to keep their separate sort of geographical identities. But look, I mean, my thing is, we can either have fewer people, or we can have, you know, or we can keep the Greenbelt entirely intact. But we need homes people live in, and they can't all be high-rise blocks over railway lines. People want homes with gardens and a school nearby that they can send their children to.
Exactly. It can't be all one thing, be that high rise or great big executive homes. We have to be able to build a range of different properties to be able to fit, local areas and also affordability.
Overall, I mean, again, I'm no big fan of this Labour government, but overall, I think in principle, I support all of these measures. I'm just wondering in practice whether they'll work and how they'll work.
No, and look, I echo what you're saying. I think, I do. What they're proposing sounds wonderful. It's whether they actually get tough and actually enforce those housing targets. And as you've already said, we know that even 300,000 homes a year isn't enough to beat the backlog and our future demand.
Indeed.
So
and also a half requirement for half to be affordable homes. But again, what definition of affordable homes are we using? Because that 400k definition ain't what most people think. James Humberston Pope, housing expert, thank you so much.